Hello, this is Eric of Sparky Studio and welcome to my review of the Neewer F500 camera monitor. This is a self-purchase. They have no say in this review. None of this 5 out of 5 stars, Amazon everything, it's perfect, it's this and that. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Now we're going to find out what is great about this and not so great. And one thing I love about this monitor is its ability to show me where I'm focusing. And that is what I bought it for. And for that purpose, it exceeds exceedingly well. Now let's get started.
Sparky Studio.
Yeah. Looking at our display, we have a menu button right here that can be rotated as well as pressed in. We have a 1/4 inch connection type with locating pin connection type. We also have our touch for touch on, touch off, and we hold the power button for 5 seconds to turn it on or off. HDMI output, HDMI input, that's from your camera into this device or another display. Here we have a DC 12-volt barrel connection in power port. Flipping to this side, our writing is flipped the other way. A USB 5-volt in, which you need 2 amps for. Some laptops will be 1 amp. And we have a DC barrel type connection for 8.4 volts output. We have a headphone jack. We also have a 1/4 inch locating pin type. And we have an SD card slot. And rotating on the other side, we have another 1/4 inch mount with locating pin type. And on the back side, we have the location to input our battery that's included with this device. Now, one thing we'll notice when I flip around is the power is always on forever. That uses some power, some battery drain. So what you may want to do when not in use is take out the battery. On the topic of battery, here is the included charger with this device. We can see a micro USB connection port, USB type A on the other side. Slides in, there's no worry about having to do an unlatch button. And here is the display when we charge the device. Let's assemble this frame that we saw at the beginning. And you're gonna look at the tabs on the bottom. That's probably the best way to start it right here. Now I lined it into place. It's now lined up and I now push it. There, just like that. I'm going to slide that into place. And this Velcro sticks to this tapered plastic very nicely. Now we also have this bracket that's included. And this has a cold shoe mount right here. And that's going to be to your camera cold shoe or some other cold shoe as you choose. And there's also a 1/4 inch mount as well. This right here screws onto the device itself with our locating pins. We have the top, we have the bottom, and we also have the side. I'm going to choose the side. It's going to mount really nicely this way, upside down, or right side up. And when it's locked in place, it is locked in place. We have other mounting points right here for other devices. Maybe you want your little wireless microphone system receiver right here. A mini HDMI cable to regular HDMI, as well as micro HDMI to regular HDMI. A cleaning cloth for cleaning our screen and getting rid of those nasty fingerprints, as well as a user manual. Now let's get this set up. Right now you're seeing the full display information of my digital camera on this display. But how do I get to this menu? I press the button on the top right there. Now if I want to get rid of different menus or change our settings, I can see focus peaking and everything that's in focus. Oh, look, the screen. We can see the red on the screen, and that's to show us that it's in focus. Press this and I can change all these settings and simply make it so I can see individual objects. And yes, we can change the type of RGB we see, red, green, blue. Another little hidden menu button is we can see right at the bottom. That was the button at the top right here. What that setting does is simply turn on or turns off the touchscreen for this monitor. And this is what it looks like out of the packaging. But we're using a LUT file, so let me change it to a regular recording format. And this is what we see out of the package. We see our RGB colors, we see our light vector scopes and so forth. And here is the colors of the package. This is not quite accurate. It's overly kind of blown out and saturated. By eye, this looks purplish. By eye, this looks natural, perfect. I find with 6500K with the actual LUT is actually accurate. But 5600K is what I prefer to use normally. Here's my monitor connected to my camera. And one thing I really love about this is I can see in large scale my camera menu. This is so wonderful to have because the display is so small. However, I can't actually tap the screen to do anything. It just doesn't work for this menu. Now, if I double tap the screen, I can bring up the menu here where I can choose different options. So let's go right to the top and show a couple useful ones. And to see that's working, we can see those RGBs move as I move my hand across. Vector scope, it's a good way to see if there's any color shift. So we can see it's shifting to the blue right now. Here we go for a brightness histogram. And of course, as we change our position, that histogram is going to change. My personal favorite option is focus peak. And of course, if I'm not doing manual focus, it's actually hard to notice. So let's go to manual focus. So if we look at the side of the screen here, we're on number 10. Now if I switch down to like 0, or down as we go towards 0, we see a lot less. So it's pretty cool. We can actually change the amount of peaking as well. Zebras. And here let's check out our false colors. False color 1 and 2. To get back to our main menu, I go to return, and now I can go to our next one. Right here is one that I would like to show, because if your screen is facing the wrong way for you, you can actually change this auto mirror to say off and flip the other way horizontally, just as an example. So let's watch what happens. Deformation looks pretty much like anamorphic would look. We can see these squeeze modes. Magnification is a very useful feature, so we can see if something's in focus, or if you want to capture something like that cable behind and you want to be able to see it better, we can change our magnification on our screen and then figure that out much easier. Right now I have a LUT in here, so let's change the LUT to on and watch those color change. We can see it went actually much better. And we have all these different options for color temperature and our brightness and so forth. And we can see my firmware is 2.13 at this moment in time. And one ability we have with this monitor is to 4K image out to PC, as I'm doing right now. Though most of the time what I simply do is I run it with display mode so I can see some of the settings on my camera. However, the Fujifilm X-S20 changes the scene to 1080p. I must admit I had one problem here that Neewer looked into, and apparently my screen is actually defective. They actually went out and rented my Fujifilm X-S20 to see if they have the same issue that I have, where about every few minutes, for 1 or 2 seconds, my screen goes blank. Here's the display after I configure it the way I want. I can see the volume levels of, and this is wonderful. Good job. And this is using the battery, the NPF battery. So I have nothing connected except for the cable to the camera in 4K, and it just did that. I could go without having a replacement screen, but I kind of need that 4K out so I don't have to disconnect and reconnect my micro HDMI port. One advantage of having a monitor, especially when you have a micro HDMI, which is really small and kind of a fragile type port, because you can see it's like small, like USB type C, is it will protect this from getting damaged. There's a lot more durability when using a different port that's full-size HDMI on this monitor out to PC, especially with my EasyCap 4K that makes everything simple in order to pass through my signal. Any setting you do on your camera monitor does not affect the display out. Now to discuss some of the disadvantages of this F500 monitor. There are things definitely to consider, such as the fact that NPF battery that it comes with, or any NPF battery, will have the red light on even when the monitor is off. And in my case, I have a camera cage connected to a camera handle to this, and this mounted on top. It works, and it powers my dummy battery for my camera, and it powers my monitor as well, so it's kind of a streamlined system, at least for myself. I would have loved to see a right angle HDMI, micro HDMI to the device, which luckily I did get one myself, and that's what I have because the cable otherwise goes across my touchscreen. Might not be a problem to you, and it's not really a problem to me, it's just kind of in the way. When it comes to using this Neewer F500 monitor, there's some uses that I found that I didn't expect, like being able to see my menu of my camera in much bigger writing. We can see the display of the camera screen on the screen, but I can also remove that. This is the display out to HDMI. You got some features there, including what I like to see is the volume levels. This way I know my volume is being recorded properly. I can see my levels, and I don't need the display of the camera to do that. Pretty sweet stuff. The focus peak feature is extremely useful, but the color tones out of the package I find are not very accurate. However, when I use LUT 6500K, it is very good actually at 6500K color spectrum. So who would have thunk? At 5600K, for everything else, I found it to be more accurate than 6500K, especially once configured. Lowering the contrast a bit, adding a little more saturation is a lovely thing to do for a little better look. I also went to custom in terms of my colors because when I went to custom I found out the green level was a bit high and looked a bit greenish. Though your experience may vary based upon your camera. I'm using the Fujifilm X-S20 and this has been my experience. If you want to have a little bit bigger screen and some useful features, it's definitely one to consider, especially when considering it has HDMI out. HDMI out allows me to record to my PC using my EasyCap 4K, and it also protects, in my particular case, my micro HDMI from wear and tear because now I'm given a full-size HDMI out port. I could, if I want to, connect this to an 85-inch screen and not have a problem viewing on a nice large screen. Pretty useful if that's something you can use. In my case, I'm going to be using this for recording movies, and since I added handles to my camera, I really can't see my screen that's on my camera very well anymore. And this can be placed pretty much wherever, as long as you got the right mounting mechanism. In my case, I'm using a Ulanzi claw. The other devices from different brands allow you to connect in different spots, so the choice ultimately is yours. Feel free to ask questions below because I'm of course going to be using this, and I hope to be of assistance to you. Don't forget to subscribe to Sparky Studio and help this channel grow. Thanks for watching, and have yourselves a most wonderful day.